So today you find me on a long overdue test ride of the Super Meteor 650. Talk about being late to the party. Now there is little that has not already been covered about this motorcycle by many owners, journalists, YouTubers, some of whom are owners themselves, and other motorcycle enthusiasts, but I had some of my own questions that I needed answering. In my recent run of test rides, many had asked me about the Super Meteor, and I was quickly realising I might have missed a trick and something I needed to address quickly. It was earlier this week when riding out with a friend that he asked me the question: if you were looking for a 650 and you love your Meteor 350 so much, what did you think about the Super Meteor 650? To which I once again responded that I'd never ridden it. Now, it might have been the wideness of his eyes opening in surprise that was for me the straw that broke the camel's back, or more poignantly brought home the fact that I needed to address this gap in my motorcycle hunt. So here I am, finally actually riding the Super Meteor 650. Now, I must confess, I approached this test ride a little differently. Aside from my usual research, I decided that I'd have no cameras, no distractions, nothing for me to think about or do other than just riding the bike and enjoying the view. I spent several hours doing this, as I really wanted to just engage. I did A roads, B roads, I did dual carriageways, motorways, back roads, dirty roads, clean roads, all sorts of environments that I typically spend a bit of time in, just really trying to get to feel what the motorcycle would be like to live with for the months and years ahead. Now, I know that's a tall order, and some might say it's not possible to do unless you've lived with it, but I was really trying my best to fully immerse myself in this test ride. And that is what I did. So, what have I learned? Well, let's just start with a little history. Royal Enfield started building what we know today with their 650 twin-cylinder motorcycles back in 2018. We saw lots of change in Royal Enfield, particularly in the UK around this time. And with the engine they introduced two motorcycles. There was the Interceptor Roadster and the Continental GT Cafe Racer. It would be another 5 years before we saw the launch of what we now call the new Super Meteor 650, but it was actually quite a historical turnaround. You see, the original Super Meteor, made between 1952 and 62, was itself replaced by a bike called the Royal Enfield Interceptor. So it's kind of a bit, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Or the egg or the chicken? And in this case, what came first, the Interceptor or the Super Meteor? Well, first there was the Super Meteor, and then it was followed by the Interceptor, and decades later there was then the Interceptor, and that was then followed by the Super Meteor. So what came first? Well, if you've not been completely confused by my history research, it seems that the Super Meteor was actually first. But enough of that confusing history. What we do know is that the twin 650 from the 2018 Interceptor is the one that we find in today's Super Meteor, and the Continental GT, and the Shotgun, and the Bear 650, and more recently the Classic 650. So the question I wanted to ask, with all the progress in leaps and bounds that Royal Enfield has been making in recent years, with bike after bike launch, with improvement after improvement, is the Super Meteor 650 still relevant today? Yes, absolutely. Of course it is. Thank you for joining me. If you want to hear some more about what I really think of the Super Meteor 650, then stick around, don't go anywhere, and stay with me, musician on a motorbike. Thank you for joining me. Today you find me climbing aboard the Super Meteor 650. Now I'll be honest, this is a long time in coming, and quite frankly I think I've been a bit of an idiot. Maybe I should say I've just made a bit of a mistake. I kind of overlooked it. I loved it. It was beautiful. And particularly the interstellar green. I remember seeing that in the showroom and absolutely falling in love with that black metallic green and those gold stripes. Real class. But after a long gap of it being launched, I finally decided that today was the day that I needed to take this out for a ride. In fact, it wasn't me that decided, it was someone suggested, because as you all know, I love my Meteor 350. It's been a great bike for the last 3 years, and I've been considering another ride. And a friend said to me, well, have you considered the Super Meteor? And I said, not really. And he said, why not? And I thought for a moment, yeah, why not? I've ridden the Shotgun, I've ridden the Bear, I've ridden the Interceptor. What was the other one I rode the other day? Oh, the new Classic 650. And yet somehow this has passed me by, and I'm not quite sure why or what happened. Whether there wasn't one in, or whether because it wasn't out the front, it wasn't encouraged, or I don't know. But today I made a point, and you might notice in this video, there was no footage of me leaving Hatfields, and there was no footage of me talking as I rode the bike in the early part. What I wanted to do today is put the cameras away in my bag and just not think about them, because I think there's three kind of approaches that we have to choosing a bike. One is to read everything on the internet, to read all the brochures, to just look at the pictures and just decide that's the one for me. There's something in the passion scale, not in the head but in the heart, of just pure passion for something. The second approach is to watch other people's views and listen to other people's views and thoughts and what they say about a bike and what their approach is, or even other people's comments on the internet. I'm not talking about professional journalists, just casual observers. And then the final one is actually getting on the thing and taking it for a test ride. Now, we live in a world where the first two, reading stuff and being told about stuff, influences us so heavily. It's almost a deep psychological need for external validation. Now, some people don't have it, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot more people have it than are often willing to admit that they have that. Now, for me, I like to think I'm quite independent, but actually I like to listen to what other people have to say. Why? Because it interests me. And I think there was some kind of early days on this where some things were said about the lowness of the bike, the firmness of the suspension, the forward controls, and I listened. And I was an idiot because I shouldn't have listened to other people's thoughts. Even though I loved it, loved the look, loved the styling, I just kind of thought maybe this isn't quite the right bike for me. I think it really proves that we need to experience something to fully understand it. Now, I've just ridden this, and anybody who's ridden the 650 engine range from Royal Enfield will know that this really is just a stunning engine. Whether it's in the Interceptor, whether it's in the Shotgun, whether it's in the Bear, as it's been slightly tuned, even in the Continental GT, that's another one that I've ridden. You know, it's a beautiful engine. It's got plenty of power for that excitement, but it's happy to just cruise and take things easy. And here we have what might be considered the natural kind of transition from a Meteor 350 is a Super Meteor. And I don't totally believe that myself. I'll be honest with you. Let me just lay something down, because I think they're very different bikes. I think just because something's a 350, a 650 doesn't naturally mean an upgrade. It's a different machine, a different beast. But if I love my 350, and this is just me personally, and if I really appreciate the quality of the ride on my 350, but really I'm just looking to experience a bit more power, then, well, maybe this is a bit more of a natural transition for me to consider. Now, some of the things that people have talked about and the questions I would be asking are those points that I just made. So, is the foot forward too far forward? Is the suspension too firm? Is the ride quality good enough? Is my back going to be able to cope with the seat? Well, those are the questions I wanted to ask. And let me just share with you, the suspension on this, I think, is fine. Okay, maybe it's not the best on any motorbike ever produced, but we've got a high quality machine here that's been designed, and it is available at an incredible price. But don't let the price make you think, oh, I'm buying a cheap bike, because this thing really is stunning. In fact, I would quite happily say that having ridden here on my Meteor 350 today, and I've got used to that, I was more mindful of the suspension. I'd say that this is softer than the Meteor 350, and mine is pretty well running. I've had it 3 years, it knows my weight, and I've adjusted it and played around and done all sorts, and it's absolutely fine now. But this just felt really planted. Just wait for the car to pass. So the suspension, I think, is a no-brainer. It's absolutely fine. It didn't feel too harsh. It didn't feel abrupt. I hit a lot of bumps along this road and other roads, and it just feels pretty stable. Now, the feet forward position. It's interesting how we use that, don't we? The term forward, isn't that really just kind of, what does forward mean? I know that's a little bit deep, but just bear with me on this. We're so used to what we call midway. Imagine if every motorbike that was ever built was just positioned there. We'd call that normal. And then if we put the feet positions in the middle, we'd call it, well, that's back positioning. What I'm saying is it's all relative. Now, when I first got on, yeah, it took some getting used to, because even though I've got the Meteor, the feet is further forward on this than even on the Meteor. Even with a bit of struggle, I can stand up on the Meteor. But with this one, it does take you too far forward. There's no way you could stand up on those pegs. But after riding it for a bit, after a while, I did begin to adjust. I did find myself quite happily just putting my feet in the right position, finding the gear stick, and just changing gears. And it was fine. It was lovely. And it really was a relaxed position. In fact, the more I sat there and thought, this is a relaxed position, the more relaxed I became. The ride just became even more joyous. And, you know, I pretty much enjoy riding anyway. So, feet forward, I don't know what I was going on about. It's not too far forward. And I have heard other people say that Harleys have an even further foot forward position. Now, that's what I've heard and read in other people. I can't vouch for that. Maybe some of you know that. But the point is, this isn't as far forward as many bikes. And it's lovely. It's just a comfortable riding position. Now, I would suggest if someone struggles with the lower of their back, on the kind of the tail down here, I think it's called the coccyx, you might want to just consider that that's going to, all your weight is going to rest on that, and you just need to be sure that that is something you could take. But honestly, it just wasn't a problem. Now, something I do remember a while ago hearing about on these bikes is towards the middle, there is actually the same facility to fit foot pegs if you wanted to do them midway. Now, why would you do that if you've got foot forward? I'm not saying you change the brake and everything, but maybe if you were on a long ride, and this is just a thought, you could fit those just as somewhere that you could bring your feet back a bit and just relieve a little bit of the pressure, then going back to the relaxed position. That's something that I'm thinking. I don't know if that's even valid. I haven't heard or seen anybody else do that, but that's something that I might ask the dealer if that's something that can be done. But yeah, foot forward, suspension, absolutely cracking. Now, what were the other things that concerned me about their bike? Well, those were the two things really. I think, let me just talk about the positives, what I love about this particular bike. The first thing is the fuel tank. I think this is one of the larger, apart from the Himalayan, this is one of the larger fuel tanks. So you've got more fuel to take you further. It's a cruiser, it's designed to go long distance. But the fact that you don't have to worry about fill-ups as frequently, I think that's a real bonus to this. The quality of the controls, I mean, this has been done time and time again. The quality of the controls really is everything I'd hoped it would be. You've got this beautiful metal, and it's not shiny like you've got on the classic 650. It looks like it could just weather a few drops of rain and not make you think you need to get home and wash it. It just looks gorgeous, but you can just see the quality. You've got adjustable levers for both the front brake and the clutch, which is, you know, a bike of this range is just phenomenal. Absolutely love that. Some of the other things that I love about this are the styling. You know, I've seen people talk about the styling, and there was somebody who actually broke down and looked at the lines of styling. Now, I'm like probably most people, I don't know anything about design or architecture or style. All I know is when I see something that looks beautiful, I know. That's subjective, that's personal, but I just think the lines on this thing, the curves, the geometry, just everything just oozes class. And the other thing about the Super Meteor is the colours available are stunning, every single one of them. I think if I were to make any changes, I'd need to live with it for a while. You know, there's some things I'd like to do, but I'd want to live with it before I made too many. But there are a couple of things that I might like to do. The mirrors seem quite robust and seem pretty good, but I just think bar end mirrors on this look amazing, look really good. I think if you have the screen, personally, I think these mirrors kind of suit it well, but I just love bar end mirrors. I just really think they just just add a nice touch to this. Now, personally, the screen is something which I don't really like the look of, I'll be honest with you. It's not my thing. I think this bike with bar end mirrors without the screen just looks stunning. Having said that, if I was to actually go cruising, and I mean go a long way, then I'd probably consider a screen, you know, because it's about comfort, not about looks. You remember on my old Meteor a while ago, I put on some hand muffs to keep my hands warm. Looked hideous, but they served a purpose in the colder winter, and I got to use the bike. So style is a great thing, but sometimes, you know, we need to think about actual practical usage of that. Now, the only other thing that I've considered is on bikes, and I've never had this before, is I'd like to use this all throughout the year. And so heated grips would be something that I'd quite like to have added as well. And one thing I have noticed is that if you have handguards that protect you from the wind, that means that the heated grips can do more to keep your hand warm. But I understand that you can't fit handguards if you've got the bar end mirrors. So this is why maybe living with it for a bit might be a thing. Or maybe you have the bar end mirrors in the summer and then you put your handguards on in the winter. You know, who knows? Maybe tinkering around with a bike might catch on. I don't know. But yeah, absolutely stunning. The design of the twin exhausts, the sound, the engine, the foot forward, the black and the twin with the silver here just absolutely look gorgeous. Oh, there was something else I nearly forgot. You know, I rode the Classic a while ago, absolutely beautiful bike. I rode the Bear 650, stunning bike. There was a couple of things that the more I thought about it, the more I realised what I kind of wanted, that they both had missing. Now, the first thing the Bear had missing was the centre stand. Now, I know that's not uncommon. There's a lot of bikes don't have centre stands. But I'm not one of your big maintenance gurus. I just want to wash the bike. I want to just clean the chain. I want to make sure it's lubricated regularly. And it's just so much easier if you've got a centre stand. Now, you can buy devices to lift the bike up. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that kind of stuff. And it's not, you know, not insuperable if that's your kind of thing. But just as a bit of convenient. And of course, this has a centre stand. Now, something both the Bear 650 and the Classic 650 lack are tubeless tyres. They're both tubed wheels. Now, there's nothing wrong with tubed wheels. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. But for me personally, just knowing if I've got a kit
that I can repair a tyre easily if I break down somewhere, if I get a nail or something in the tyre. There's just a little bit of assurance. And of course the shotgun and the Super Meteor 650 and even my Meteor 350 have tubeless tyres, and those are the kind of things that made me realise and started to look again at the Super Meteor and the Meteor 350. Thought I'd picked a quiet spot. Clearly this is probably quieter on the M4 at the moment. So yeah, this styling is just stunning. I'm loving I mentioned the controls, and you've got this kind of, I don't know what you call it, brush steel or what you call it, but it's just beautiful. And you've got it on the handlebars, just the fittings, not the actual handlebars themselves, they're black. And you've got even the fuel tank, you know, just looks lovely. The whole thing is just designed beautifully. It really does look a lovely bit of kit. I do love these metal badges on the petrol tank as well. Those look quite gorgeous. Now, if there was one thing I'm not sure about on the bike, it's the dials. I've had them on the Meteor. I mean, as a design concept, they're fantastic. You've got an analog dial, you've got digital display in the middle, you've got your information. They're just not particularly exciting. You know, if we look at the classic 650 or 350, that needle dial traditional just looks beautiful. If you look at the Continental GT and the Interceptor, you know, the twin speedo and rev counter, absolutely stunning. Even the new TFT display, you know, your traditionalists might not be fans of that, but even the TFT display that comes on the Gorilla, the Himalayan, the Bear 650, that just looks great. But I just find this particular combination of dials is probably the one weakness. And it's not just of this bike, it's on this, it's on the shotgun. Actually, it's similar on my Meteor 350. It just, I don't know, it doesn't ooze excitement or anything interesting. It's functional and it does what it needs to. But I'm really picking holes here. You know, I'm trying to find what it is that I didn't like about it. And I think those are possibly the only things that I don't like. But having said that, in all seriousness, you know, they work, they're functional, they're clear, they're easy to read. They tell you what gear you're in. Tells you how much fuel you've got. You can see what speed you're going. And it even throws in the trip and navigation. You know, if you want to have some sort of mount for your phone, you can use your phone as a navigation, or you can even buy a dedicated navigation system. There's lots on the market these days. So there are options you can do and play around with that. But, you know, that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, lovely bike. Love the tubeless tyres. Love the styling. Love the large fuel tank. Love the cruising sitting position. Would like perhaps bar end mirrors, and then there's a few other things that I could do. In terms of luggage, I'm a big fan of having luggage and having the flexibility to take it anywhere and go anywhere, but I wouldn't want to keep the luggage on all the time. You know, I think it's handy having somewhere to put stuff, but I think there's a time when you need to seriously consider you know, just having it look like a motorbike. When you're cruising and touring, you know, the screen, the luggage and everything, fantastic. But I think for me, as a medicine machine that I just take out from time to time, I'm not somebody who commutes regularly to work on a bike. So this is just, you know, mostly for pleasure, and then for the odd cruises where I go and visit people or friends or go away for the weekend. You know, there could be like two different bikes. One that has everything on it when I go cruising and going away and staying away, and one that I just kind of strip down for just kind of like as it is just right now. And that's the great thing about this, you know, it doesn't need to be one thing or the other. You can do it as you like. Well, I think that's all really I have to say at the moment. I think it's time we got back on the road and actually carried on experiencing it.
Well, thanks for spending time listening to me and my thoughts on the Super Meteor 650. It really was a thoroughly enjoyable ride. And for those in the know will realise that this was the first time that I actually got to use my DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro. I'm kind of still learning how to use it, how to get the best out of it. I think there's some settings that I would probably try differently. I couldn't physically get closer because you see there was a road there, but it just seemed an ideal spot to stop. I probably have less wide angle and more of a kind of a zoom in perhaps. I was really fortunate in the morning that when I was riding the bike I had beautiful sun, and it just made the whole experience feel great. The strange thing is that by about now it was getting really cold. You can see it's grey. The light wasn't really particularly great for the video taking, so I think that would have had a big effect. I wasn't going to do it today unless it was sunny, and when I left home it was, but we didn't have forecast rain, but sadly rain it did. What I did after this, I went out for a ride. I'll take you on some of the journey, and I took in some motorway as well because I wanted to try it out on the motorway to see what that was like. It was about the motorway that it really started to lash down. Well, I thought it started to get heavy rain until I'd got off the motorway, and then it got really heavy. Yeah, it was an interesting afternoon after this, but thoroughly enjoyed the riding experience. So here I am back in the saddle. It's good to be riding the bike again rather than just talking about it. A thoroughly enjoyable ride. I took in a number of different roads which I mentioned earlier. This is kind of very typical of Hampshire roads. I live in Hampshire, where you can kind of travel through these beautiful country lanes, lots of greenery, shrubbery, and every now and again you get a beautiful open view, and the curves and the bends are just wonderful to ride on a bike. What you might also notice is that some of the roughness of the road, which is quite typical as well. So I really gave the suspension a good test, and honestly it felt absolutely fine. It was something I was conscious of, more mindful than I would perhaps normally be about, but I think it would be fine. I think I'll love this bike. As I say, when I rode my Meteor 350 earlier in the video, as I started to become more mindful of that, I realised that it was, it's a pretty harsh ride as well, but I've had it for 3 years and I've never really thought about it. It's just when someone puts a thought in your mind, you reflect on it a bit more. The only thing that some of these roads is that they do have potholes the size of small villages, so you've got to be careful that you don't hit one of those, because that's uncomfortable in any vehicle. I hit one in my car the other day that was covered in a puddle. I didn't see it till I'd hit it. So obviously we just have to be careful. But yeah, these back roads, absolutely beautiful. Thoroughly enjoyed riding on these. Another typical type of road is in the Hampshire villages. Well, Hampshire, Berkshire, Surrey villages, wherever you kind of ride around the area that I generally do. 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And the lovely thing about this bike is it didn't make me feel like I needed to go faster. It was happy and comfortable at 30. And now, moving into a very typical town. We've got the speed bumps, which is not unusual these days. You can see they're quite harsh, obviously to help maintain and slow down the traffic. But again, it was a great way of testing the bike. So we've got the undulations in the road from a lack of care of the roads, and then we've got the intentional speed bumps to slow us down. Now, I promised that I'd try out the motorway. I rarely use this motorway these days, and I'd completely forgotten that we've got masses of roadworks on this particular junction, so it was restricted to 50. So I didn't really get to try out what I would call a proper freeway motorway style of riding, but there we are, better tarmac. The motorway is as boring as a motorway could ever be. Nothing exciting happened here. The bike performed adequately. Joining from the carriageway, keeping up with the traffic. There was plenty of power here. Not that I ever needed it, but it was there if ever I needed to overtake, and that was very assuring. But that's not unusual for the 650 Twin, which we all know and love. And then the last kind of major road that I'll just quickly show you is just a very typical dual carriageway, and it was just absolutely, again, I was doing 70 miles an hour along here, which is the speed limit. And it was just plenty more to go still if I needed it, which I didn't. I was comfortable, confident. It felt very firm on the road, and it was as I kind of expected, but it really was just a great ride. Thoroughly enjoyed this bike for all the cruising that I could potentially do on it. Where possible, I'll try and avoid motorways, and I'll try and avoid dual carriageways because they are boring, but they do get us to where we want to be quicker, and so they're all part of the game, I guess. So that just leaves me to say a very special thank you to Hatfields of Crowthorne for the loan of the Super Meteor 650 and their advice on the various aspects of the different bikes that Royal Enfield offer. They've been super helpful. If you want to learn more about what offers may be available, because Royal Enfield do have offers from time to time, Hatfields actually have a newsletter that you can sign up for. If you go to their website, I'll put a link in the comment section. You can then sign up to that, and if there are any promotions, then they can help share those with you. I will just add, I am not sponsored, nor do I get anything for doing these videos. They're completely off my own back and just out of my own personal interest. So there's nothing that I'm not affiliated at all with Hatfield. It's just that I really am grateful for the support that they've given me. If you like this video, please do hit that like button. If you're not yet a subscriber, I'd really appreciate it if you were, so do feel free to subscribe. And if you've got any thoughts about your experience with the Super Meteor, any preconceptions that you've had, or any thoughts or ideas you want to share, please do add those into the comments section. I do get through most of the comments and try and respond where possible. So thanks again for joining me today. Take care, ride safe, and look forward to catching up with you again soon. Bye for now.